All right, let's jump right into it. Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're basically strapping on our boots and stepping right onto the front lines of gastrointestinal disease. We are not just going to treat pharmacology like some boring list of drugs you have to painstakingly memorize. No way. We're going to view this as a thrilling, strategic battle. Your gut is the battlefield, and today, you are the commanding general. We're going to learn exactly how to deploy your therapeutic arsenal against a relentless enemy, which is ulcerative colitis. To defeat any enemy, you've got to understand them first. And honestly, here's the core mystery of inflammatory bowel disease, or IBD. Why on earth would your own body treat your colon like a foreign invader? IBD is a group of idiopathic, chronic intestinal conditions. And, idiopathic is really just a fancy medical way of saying, well, we don't entirely know why it starts. But we do know it's a massive immune-mediated war zone triggered by a response to bacterial antigens right there in the intestinal lumen. It's like your immune system just gets utterly confused and starts launching heavy artillery at your own GI tract. And that results in those classic awful symptoms of relentless abdominal pain and bloody diarrhea.
Okay, moving to Section 1, the battlefield, classifying the disease.
Before we can even think about treating the patient, we need to survey our exact battlefield. If you don't know where the enemy is hiding, your weapons are completely useless, right? So imagine drawing out the GI tract on a whiteboard here. This gives us a stark contrast between our two main IBD foes. On one side, we have Crohn's disease. Crohn's is basically guerrilla warfare. It can attack anywhere from the mouth all the way down to the anus, with deep transmural inflammation. It creates these non-continuous skip lesions. But our main focus today is ulcerative colitis. Notice the really distinct pattern of UC. It usually starts at the rectum and moves up in this continuous, unbroken wave of inflammation. And unlike the deep transmural attack of Crohn's, UC limits its warfare strictly to the superficial mucosal layer of the colon. It is a continuous mucosal level attack.
That brings us to Section 2, the frontline troops, 5 Aminosalicylates, or 5 ASAs.
So, how exactly do we fight a continuous mucosal level attack? Well, for mild to moderate UC, we don't just immediately launch the nukes. We send in our frontline troops, the 5 ASAs. But here is where pharmacology gets incredibly clever. If you were to just swallow pure 5-ASA, it would get absorbed way too early in the upper GI tract. Literally only a tiny fraction would actually reach the colon where the war is happening. So scientists utilize this brilliant concept called a prodrug. A prodrug is essentially an inactive medication that only gets converted into an active drug once it's inside your body. Take the classic drug sulfasalazine. It consists of 5-ASA firmly linked to a carrier molecule by a special azo bond. When it finally reaches the colon, the resident colonic bacteria act like a key. They cleave that azo bond and unleash the active 5-ASA exactly at the site of the battle. Once there, it acts topically to inhibit inflammatory cytokines and mop up those damaging free radicals.
Pharmaceutical companies have engineered some really wild ways to deliver this payload. Ulcalazine and valsalazide use that exact same brilliant azo bond bacteria-dependent release trick. But then we have mesalamine. Instead of using a bacterial trigger, mesalamine formulations are often encased in a pH-dependent enteric coat, or sometimes a semi-permeable membrane. They are literally chemically programmed to resist the highly acidic environment of the stomach, and they only dissolve when they reach the more alkaline pH of the lower gut. It's basically a precisely timed tactical drop.
All right, Section 3, heavy artillery, the corticosteroids.
So, what happens when those frontline troops just aren't cutting it? The inflammation is raging, the 5-SASs are barely holding the line, but they definitely can't push the enemy back. That's when we escalate. We call in the heavy artillery, corticosteroids. Now, the absolutely crucial point is this, and picture this highlighted in giant neon letters. Corticosteroids are incredibly powerful anti-inflammatory agents. They are highly effective at suppressing the immune system and inducing remission to stop an acute flare-up. But you have to heed this warning. They are disastrous for long-term maintenance. You do not, under any circumstances, want to keep a patient on systemic steroids indefinitely because you will just invite a total cascade of deleterious effects. They are for short-term, heavy-hitting tactical strikes only.
Because systemic steroids have such severe side effects, we always try to deliver them as locally as possible. If the ulcerative colitis is confined to the left side of the rectum, we can just use a hydrocortisone enema or a budesonide foam. Think of it like applying the fire retardant directly onto the fire itself. And for more extensive disease, like pancolitis, we use oral extended-release budesonide. You might be wondering, why budesonide specifically? Well, because it undergoes extensive first-pass hepatic metabolism. That means once it does its job in the gut, the liver rapidly degrades it before it can flood the rest of the body. This gives us maximum local impact with minimal systemic collateral damage.
Moving to Section 4, Special Ops, are biologics and immunomodulators.
When the disease is moderate to severe, or when it just totally scoffs at our 5-ASAs and our steroids, it's time to bring in the special ops. This is the most advanced, targeted weaponry in our arsenal. Now, these aren't blunt instruments. They are surgical strikes against the immune system's communication lines. Notice the suffix on these drugs, MAB. That stands for monoclonal antibody. It's a fantastic mnemonic to remember that these are lab-engineered proteins. First up, we have the TNF-alpha inhibitors like infliximab and adalimumab, which neutralize the primary inflammatory cytokines. If those happen to fail, we have alpha-4 integrin inhibitors like vedolizumab. These guys literally block the leukocytes from migrating into the intestinal mucosa in the first place. And then we have IL-12 and 23 inhibitors like ustekinumab that stop lymphocyte activation entirely. They just surgically dismantle the inflammatory response.
Working right alongside the biologics, we have the traditional immunomodulators. The real heavy hitters here for ulcerative colitis are the thiopurines, azathioprine, and 6-mercaptopurine, or 6-MP. These oral medications are brilliant for maintaining remission. In fact, they have this fantastic corticosteroid sparing effect. What that means is, if a patient is stuck relying on toxic steroids to stay in remission, introducing a thiopurine can allow us to slowly, safely taper them off the steroids entirely.
Section 5. The treatment algorithm flow. Let's pull back for a second and look at the big picture. Because, honestly, pharmacology isn't just about knowing a bunch of drugs. It's about knowing exactly when to play your cards. Let's map out the clinical algorithm, step by step, like drawing a flowchart. We're moving from a patient in severe distress with urgency and bleeding, all the way to a patient living a healthy, symptom-free life. Step 1 is always to induce remission. For mild cases, we use our topical or oral 5-ASAs. Step 2, if the disease is refractory, meaning it's stubborn and fighting back, we escalate. This is where we bring in the induction power of corticosteroids, or we step up to biologics like the TNF-alpha inhibitors. Finally, step 3, once the fire is totally out, we must maintain remission. We drop those steroids completely, and we maintain the peace using 5-ASAs, biologics, or immunomodulators.
Now on to Section 6, Friendly Fire. We need to look at side effects and contraindications. As we all know in medicine, there are no perfect solutions, right? Only trade-offs. You simply cannot wage a war in the gut without risking some collateral damage. So let's talk about that friendly fire, the side effects you absolutely must master to keep your patients safe. Let's look back at our first 5-ASA, sulfasalazine. Remember how it's 5-ASA linked to a carrier molecule? Well, that carrier molecule is called sulfapyridine, and sulfapyridine is the main culprit for the worst side effects. Up to 45% of patients experience dose-related headaches, nausea, and fatigue. It can reversibly impair male fertility, and it inhibits intestinal folate absorption, so you better be giving these patients a folic acid supplement. It can even cause severe hypersensitivity reactions like Stevens-Johnson syndrome. This brutal toxicity profile is exactly why pharmaceutical chemists invented the isolated mesalamine formulations we discussed earlier. They wanted to get the good 5-ASA without the toxic sulfapyridine.
But isolated mesalamine comes with its own major trap. Remember how some mesalamine drugs are pH-dependent? They're designed to only release the drug when the environment becomes alkaline in the lower gut. Well, what do you think happens if you give that patient an acid-reducing drug, like a proton pump inhibitor for their heartburn? You artificially raise the pH in the stomach. If you give a patient a pH-dependent 5-ASA with a PPI, I will personally smack your gluteus maximus, because you'll strip the enteric coating away right there in the stomach, releasing the drug before it ever reaches the colon. It's a total therapeutic failure.
Finally, let's look at the heavy toll of our special ops. When you suppress the immune system with TNF-alpha inhibitors, you are swinging the gates wide open for infection. You absolutely must evaluate your patients for tuberculosis before starting these biologics because they can cause a deadly reactivation of latent TB. And for the thiopurines, azathioprine, and 6-MP, they are notorious for bone marrow suppression and hepatotoxicity. You have to monitor their complete blood counts and liver function tests like an absolute hawk.
Which leaves us with this final, provocative thought to ponder. If you completely block the immune system's communication to save the gut, what exactly are you sacrificing in the process? Every single time we push back inflammatory bowel disease with heavy immunosuppressants, we are actively walking this incredibly fine tightrope between gut healing and systemic vulnerability. It's a brilliant, terrifying balance. Thank you so much for mastering the therapeutic arsenal of ulcerative colitis with me today. Keep reviewing these mechanisms, keep analyzing those trade-offs, and I will see you in the next explainer.